Why did they laugh louder every time she stayed silent? The heat rolled across Fort Armitage like waves from a furnace, making the air shimmer above the endless stretch of tan, dust-bitten ground. 30 Marines gathered shoulder to shoulder around Range 7, boots grinding grit into the concrete. Some held cheap iced coffees. Others clutched their phones, recording, waiting, eager for a reason to laugh. The woman standing in front of them barely lifted her gaze. A faded gray shirt clung to her shoulders, sleeves rolled high enough to show the surgical scar that traced her forearm like an unfinished sentence. Her dark hair was tied back, haphazard, like style was the last war she cared to win. Her name was Alyssa Monroe, former staff sergeant. Discharged, because sometimes truth becomes too expensive for the military to afford. No one here knew that part, not yet. Right now, all they saw was a quiet woman with a rifle that looked wrong. Crimson steel, blood-red stock, barrel like liquid cherry metal, forged in a dream they didn't respect. They whistled, smirked, and nudged each other like schoolyard boys who never learned that mockery is just fear in a louder uniform. You sure that ain't from Barbie's collection? Gunnery Sergeant Dean Morales grinned, arms crossed, becoming the class clown of the battlefield. Phones lifted. Cameras rolled. "Let's get this on TikTok," someone yelled. The crowd erupted again, because laughter is easier than respect. But Alyssa said nothing. Not to defend herself. Not to correct them. Silence was her armor, the first thing they'd underestimate. She laid the crimson rifle on the metal table with a single sharp, ringing clack. The sound cut through the laughter. For one breath they quieted. One breath where something ancient and predatory coiled behind her steady gaze. Then the joke started again, because fear always needs to disguise itself as humor. Master Sergeant Victor Hale watched from the ammo shed, arms folded. His gaze narrowed, not on Alyssa but on her hands. The tremor, every 4 seconds, precise as a heartbeat. Not fear, not stress. A trained rhythm. A marksman's clock. He'd seen that once before, in a program stamped with red ink and buried under 8 years of lies. Spectre 9. The Ghost Unit. Alyssa reached into her pack and pulled out a notebook, its leather scarred by a single bullet hole. She flipped to a page filled with numbers, wind shear charts, barometric calculations, coordinates she could probably recite in her sleep. Morale sauntered up, leaning too close. "You nervous, sweetheart? We can bring out the training wheels." Alyssa inhaled. The breath anchored her. "Clear the back line," she said softly. Morales blinked. "Excuse me." "Clear the line," she repeated. "You'll want distance." There was no bravado in her voice. Just experience, heavy and unwelcome. But authority is a hard thing to swallow from someone they refuse to take seriously. Planning to break the sound barrier with that pink cannon. Morales chuckled at his own joke. Alyssa didn't correct him. It wasn't pink. It was a warning. She adjusted the scope, tracking the shimmer of steel plates far beyond standard range. Hale's gaze followed her sightline, and his stomach tightened. That wasn't a casual target. That was a record, an impossible one. The longest confirmed hit here belonged to a sniper who shook hands with admirals. Alyssa lined up twice that. Morales scoffed. "Hit half that, I'll buy you dinner." She whispered without looking away, "Make it 5. He froze. 5 kilometers. She said nothing. The wind carried the scent of oil and sunburned steel. Somewhere, a flag rope clanked lazily against a pole, counting the seconds before history corrected its own memory. Hale stepped forward, voice low. "What are you doing here, Monroe?" She finally spoke without looking away from the scope. "Something I should have done a long time ago." A number clicked into place. A calculation landed perfectly in her mind. The trembling in her hand became stillness. Through that scope, she wasn't just aiming at steel. She was aiming at a past that wouldn't stay buried. Morales tried to salvage control. 10 minutes, then I'm locking up the range. But he saw her lips move, just barely. For Ethan. The name hit Hale like a punch. Ethan Monroe. Before the thought completed, she fired. The rifle didn't crack, it roared. An unnatural thunder that shoved the earth backward. The recoil whispered instead of kicking, like the weapon breathed with her. One shot. 8 seconds of silence. Then, 5 plates in the distance shattered, dominoes falling in slow motion across the desert heat. Every Marine went still. Disbelief held the air hostage. No applause. No cheers. Just the thin, metallic clink of a single casing dancing across concrete until it kissed stillness. Stamped on the rim. S9M. Spectre 9. Ethan Monroe. She caught the casing midair like she'd been waiting 8 years to do it. Then she finally met Morales's stunned eyes. "Range is yours, Sergeant." She turned her back to them, the crimson rifle slung carelessly, like a tool she no longer feared. Every pair of eyes followed her, searching for the trick, the glitch, the cheat code. Because the human brain refuses to accept that a miracle didn't break the rules. It broke their assumptions. Hale's radio crackled, cold, metallic, directive. "Victor Hale, she's not supposed to be there. Walk away." A voice he recognized. A voice that shouldn't exist anymore. "General Carson. Declared dead. File erased." Hale looked toward the crimson rifle resting against her shoulder. He realized she wasn't showing off. She was sending a message. A warning wrapped in mathematics and consequence. She wasn't here to prove herself. She was here because someone wanted her gone. And she refused to disappear quietly a second time. The Marines stared after her like they had just seen a ghost walk out of their world and back into the one that no longer forgave survival. Hale called after her quietly. "What's coming, Monroe?" She paused, just a fraction of a heartbeat. "Whatever they buried," she said. "They're done hiding it." Then she walked away. The laughter that greeted her arrival had died in its own throat. And only one truth remained. The most dangerous person on any battlefield isn't the one who looks threatening. It's the one you underestimate. Why did the truth always arrive with warnings instead of explanations? Alyssa's boots hit the dirt with the quiet certainty of someone who learned long ago how to move without being noticed. She didn't rush. She didn't look back at the Marines staring like they had witnessed something they'd never unsee. Behind her, the flag on its pole snapped once in the sharp wind, a sound too loud for a perfectly calm morning. Master Sergeant Hale jogged to catch up, breathing heavier than he wanted to show. "You didn't answer my question," he said. She didn't slow. "I did." "What does that mean? Whatever they buried, they're done hiding it. What's coming?" Alyssa stopped. Not dramatically, just slow enough to show she had decided he deserved one piece of honesty. She turned her head, eyes still scanning the horizon. "It means this base is living on borrowed time." Hale's throat went dry. Something in her tone, controlled, emotionless, carried the kind of fear that didn't look like panic. It looked like acceptance. "The shot you fired," he continued, "that wasn't about breaking a record. That was a message," she finished, "to the only people who were listening." "And who would that be?" Hale pressed. Alyssa looked at the sky, clear, except for a faint trail of contrails too high to be training aircraft. "People who don't like loose ends." The tremor in her hand returned, 4.6 seconds between each pulse. Perfect timing. They reached the edge of the parking lot. Her old pickup truck waited in the shade of a leaning utility pole, the kind of vehicle no one would ever inspect because no one ever expected anything from the forgotten. Hale placed a hand against the door before she could open it. "You owe me more than riddles," he said quietly. Alyssa finally faced him fully. Her eyes were tired, not from the day, but from the years before it. 8 years ago, Spectre 9 wasn't shut down, she said. We were erased. His jaw tightened. Why erase an elite recon sniper program? Because we weren't a weapons program, she replied. We were a conscience. Hale stared unblinking. Conscience. We tested systems, human and machine, safeguards that prevented kill orders when civilians were present. Her voice thinned. They couldn't profit from restraint. The wind swept a strand of hair across her face. She tucked it back with the casual grace of someone too exhausted to care if she seemed strong. You think someone will try again? Hale asked. Alyssa gave a humorless half-smile. They never stopped trying. Inside the control tower overlooking the base, Colonel Mercer stood stiff as steel as she entered her office, the door shutting sharply behind her. She paced to her desk and slammed the blinds shut. Her hands shook. She hated that. The screen on her secure terminal pulsed with an incoming encrypted message. She pressed her palm to the authentication panel. The screen lit up with a logo she prayed she would never see again. Project Crimson Directive Update. A simple line of text appeared beneath it. Target retrievable. Strike authorized. Deadline imminent. Mercer exhaled shakily, whispering to herself. She wasn't supposed to come back. Her comm buzzed. A young corporal's voice crackled through. Ma'am, Headquarters is requesting your situation report on the anomaly at Range 7. Anomaly. That's what they called it. She pressed transmit. Tell HQ, she paused, swallowing the bitterness from her throat. Tell them everything is under control. The lie burned. Because it was. Spectre 9 was never under control. Especially not Alyssa Monroe. Mercer closed the terminal and locked the drawer where a single photo was hidden. Her in a Desert Strike Team uniform. Next to a group of soldiers she once commanded. One face circled in fatting red ink. Ethan Monroe. A tear she would never admit slid down one cheek. You should have stayed dead, she said into the silence. Alyssa sat in the truck with the door still open, staring out at nothing. Hale leaned his arms against the frame, voice softening. Why come back after everything? She didn't answer immediately. Her fingers tapped lightly against the steering wheel. 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe, reset. My brother believed the military could do better, she finally said. He believed people like us could protect what mattered. When he died, nothing felt worth protecting anymore. There it was. The fracture she never allowed anyone to see. Hale let the silence hold her honesty rather than crush it. And now, he asked. She looked back toward the range, toward the shattered steel that proved she wasn't done. Now I protect what he died for. Hale stared at her a long moment, the kind of moment where a person decides whether they stand in the way or stand beside. You're not alone anymore. For the first time that day, she blinked faster, the closest she came to flinching. Don't make promises you don't understand, she said. Then explain it to me, he countered. Help me understand. Alyssa opened her mouth, then froze. Her gaze snapped past Hale's shoulder. The flag on the range had stopped moving. No wind. The sudden stillness felt wrong, geometric, calculated, suffocating. A flicker of something dark crossed her eyes. Hale, she whispered, do you hear that? He listened. Nothing. Exactly nothing. No engines from the far motor pool. No drills. No chatter. Silence absolute and unnatural. Alyssa stepped slowly out of the truck. "Where is everyone?" she murmured. Hale turned, scanning the yard. No Marines in sight. A base full of soldiers, gone quiet as a graveyard. Alyssa's breathing shortened. "They cut comms," she said. "Isolate the target, remove witnesses, standard protocol." "For what?" Hale demanded. "For erasure," she whispered. Then the distant throbbing hum reached them, like something massive cutting through air with no intention of being noticed. Hale squinted at the horizon. 3 black helicopters skimmed low behind the dunes, unmarked, silent-rotor craft designed for operations that never made reports. Alyssa's pulse spiked. "They're early," she muttered. "What do they want?" Hale's voice thickened. Her jaw locked. "They want me." Her hand slipped instinctively to the crimson rifle. But then she looked at Hale, and the fear in her eyes wasn't for herself. "Hale, listen to me. If you stay near me, you die." He stepped closer instead of away. "Then I guess I'm dying near you." Her heartbeat missed a breath. He wasn't trying to be heroic. He simply refused to abandon someone who'd already been abandoned too many times. Alyssa closed her eyes for a second, not to think. To feel. Resolve anchored itself beneath the fear. "Fine," she whispered, "but if we're going to survive this, you follow my lead." He nodded once. Then came the first explosion. Far off, just a test of distance. A warning to her. Not a single Marine had fired a shot. Because the first part of erasing history is erasing the ones who know history is alive. Alyssa slammed the truck door shut. "No more running." Her voice carried a weight that didn't sound like a survivor anymore. It sounded like a soldier who remembered exactly why she had once belonged on the battlefield. Hale drew his weapon, a standard-issue rifle that suddenly felt very small. "What's the plan?" he asked. Alyssa's eyes followed the helicopters as they curved in, wolves on the perimeter. "We make them regret underestimating the ghost they thought they buried." Her hand shook, the tremor returning right on cue. A countdown. A promise. A final breath before the storm. Time to finish what they started. And somewhere above Fort Armitage, 3 silent aircraft tightened their formation, bearing soldiers who carried no names. No flags. No hesitation. The sky darkened not with clouds, but with consequences. The past had come hunting, and Alyssa Monroe refused to be erased twice. How do you prepare for a war you already lost once? The ground vibrated again, stronger this time, and dust slid from the roof of the warehouse beside them. The silent helicopters had vanished behind the dunes, but their absence felt louder than their approach. Alyssa tested the weight of the Crimson Hawk against her shoulder, checking balance, recoil readiness, sight alignment. The rifle responded like an extension of her pulse, its core purring faintly with a deep internal hum. Hale glanced toward the barracks. "Why isn't anyone responding? We should be surrounded by Marines right now." Alyssa scanned the rooftops, her breathing too calm for the adrenaline surging through her blood. "They pulled eyes away from the target first," she muttered. "Redirection ops. Distract command with a false alarm on the far perimeter by the time they figure out the breach." "It's already finished," Hale completed. Alyssa nodded once. He swallowed hard. "This is their playbook," she finished for him, "and I helped write it. The part she didn't say. And they perfected it, using the blood of people I loved." From the control tower above them, Colonel Mercer appeared suddenly, slamming open a window. "Both of you," she shouted. Her voice wasn't commanding now, it was frightened. "Inside the tower now." Alyssa's eyes narrowed. "No." Mercer looked stunned by the refusal. "Do you want to die out there?" Alyssa stepped closer to Hale instead of the building. "I die in there," she called back. "You know that." Mercer's jaw clenched. She pointed to the horizon. "They're coming for the drive for the Spectre files." "No," Alyssa corrected, raising her voice just enough to carry. "They're coming for the only witness who remembers how Spectre died." Their eyes locked for a breath, two soldiers carrying different versions of the same trauma. Then Mercer disappeared from the window. Alyssa's heart lurched. "She's making the call," she muttered. "What call?" Hale asked. "The wrong one." Her phone buzzed, a single-coded vibration. "Unknown. Encrypted. Not random." She answered. A modulation-distorted voice spoke calmly. "You fired, we saw, now stop running." Her hand trembled, right on its 4.6-second mark. "You're too late," she whispered. The voice replied. "We're never too late, that's why your brother died." Then the line cut. Alyssa stared at the cracked phone screen. The numbers blurred. The world contracted into a tunnel of soundless fury. For a moment, she wasn't at Fort Armitage anymore. She was in Hellman. Cold. Pinned down. Surrounded. Her brother's hand slipping away as he shoved the data drive into her vest. "Get up, Liz," he'd said. "You finish what I couldn't." That was the moment she broke. But this was the moment she began putting herself back together. Hale saw the shift in her eyes, clarity honed by fury. "What did they say?" he asked. Alyssa stepped forward, voice low and razor-strong. "That they think Ethan died in vain." Hale chambered his weapon. "Then let's prove them wrong." The hum of rotor systems returned, the sky growing darker as the black helicopters rose back into view, angling toward the heart of the base. Alyssa flipped her rifle to a different firing mode, one she hadn't used since the night Spectre 9 was erased. The barrel glowed faintly, crimson electricity licking along its edges. "Cover your ears," she warned. Hale barely reacted before she fired. The shot wasn't a bullet, it was a pulse, a shockwave that ripped through the air like a silent roar. The nearest helicopter staggered midair, its tail rotor fritzing out in sparks. The aircraft spun, clipped the range tower and slammed sideways into the sand, the ground trembling beneath them. Hale stared. "You can disable helicopters with that thing." Alyssa didn't answer. The other two helos dove lower, soldiers fast-roping onto rooftops and catwalks. Their armor gleamed matte black, faces sealed behind visors that revealed nothing human. Contractors, the kind who didn't get funerals. "Move," Alyssa shoved Hale toward the low building beside the tower. Gunfire cracked as the first operatives took positions. The smell of cordite hit the wind. Hale fired back, tagging one in the shoulder. The figure staggered but didn't go down. "That armor's ceramic weave," Alyssa shouted. "Joint shots only." He nodded, adjusting aim. A grenade clattered against the concrete near them, small, compact, silent. Alyssa kicked it down the drainage ditch just before it detonated, pressure wave flattening the air around them. Hale's ears rang. The world slowed. Alyssa dragged him up, stronger than she looked. Glass exploded overhead as a strike team breached the tower roof. Morale sprinted out of a side door, sidearm drawn, face white with disbelief. "Those aren't friendly," he yelled. "No kidding." Hale fired again, dropping a second attacker with a precise hit to the knee joint. Morale stumbled behind a barricade and glared at Alyssa. "You brought this here." She met his anger with ice. "I tried to warn you." "And now what?" he barked. "We die for your mystery mission." Alyssa's chest rose and fell, controlled, precise. "No," she said. "You live because of it." Bullets smashed into the barriers around them. Alyssa grabbed Morales's vest and yanked him down just as a contractor popped over the rooftop sightline. The Crimson Hawk rose with her, steady as bone-deep instinct. She fired once. The attacker's visor shattered, body dropping limp to the concrete. Morale stared, breath gone, rage replaced by terrified respect. "Who the hell are you?" he whispered. Alyssa reloaded smoothly. "Someone who didn't stay dead." Inside the tower, Mercer paced rapidly, muttering into a secure headset no one could hear. "They've arrived. Yes, I understand. No, she is not yet contained." Her voice faltered. "She's not alone anymore." She slammed her fist into the desk. The screen on the secure terminal blinked. "Failure to comply will result in termination." Mercer choked on a shaky breath. Then the word termination faded, replaced by a live targeting feed. A red box centered on Alyssa's position. Mercer froze. "No," she whispered, "not again." The building shook, concrete raining from the ceiling, as the attackers pushed deeper into the structure. She backed away from the terminal, tears she hated welling in panic. All of this was supposed to stay buried. Ethan Monroe wasn't supposed to have a sister stronger than grief. But he did. And now the reckoning had come. Hale ducked behind a fallen column. "We need a way out." Alyssa scanned the yard. "They're cutting off escape routes, pushing us into the archway near the fuel tanks." "Why?" he gasped. She locked eyes with him, voice sharp. "Because that's where they're going to end this base." His blood turned cold. Mercer reappeared, sprinting toward them down the stairs with a pistol she clearly didn't want to hold. "We have to get underground," she yelled. "They've placed charges at the fuel depot." "Morale's cursed. We have a fuel depot." Alyssa jerked her head toward the service hatch behind the vehicles. "Hail cover," she ordered, already sprinting. He laid suppressive fire as she slid across gravel toward the hatch. Bullets sparked at her heels. She wrenched the metal handle free. The ground shuddered beneath her, shouting metal smoke, death closing in. A helicopter spotlight locked on her from above. A voice boomed through an external speaker. "SBECTRE-9 survivor, surrender the rifle." The light burned white across her face. She aimed the Crimson Hawk straight at it. "No," she said. Her finger tightened. But then, Hale's voice thundered behind her. "Alyssa, look out." She spun. Too late. A strike team operator smashed into her from the side, tackling her violently into the dirt. The rifle skidded across the ground, spinning end over end, right into the open hatch. It clanged once, then sank into the darkness below. Alyssa screamed, raw and primal. "No!" The attacker's knee pinned into her spine, her breath crushed from her lungs. Morales fired desperately, but two more operators dropped into the fray, forcing him back. Hale lunged, grappling with the operative above Alyssa. They rolled, fists and elbows cracking against armor plating. Alyssa crawled toward the hatch, fingertips brushing the rim. She felt naked without the rifle. Exposed. Vulnerable. Human. The spotlight tracked her, ready to fire. And in the ringing silence before the next gunshot, her fear boiled into something else. Rage. Alyssa stood, blood dripping from her temple. "You want me?" she shouted at the sky, voice breaking. "Come finish what you started." The helicopter dipped lower, energy weapon charging. Mercer screamed. "Get down." The beam fired. Light and violence erupted across the base. The world went white. Sound collapsed into static. Hale's shout dissolved into nothing. And as Alyssa hit the ground, her final thought was not about the rifle, but about a promise carved into grief. "I will finish what you died for, Ethan." Darkness swallowed everything. Why did survival always begin in darkness? Alyssa's eyes snapped open to a world gone wrong. the cold sting of concrete pressing against her cheek, the taste of dust and blood mixing on her tongue. A single emergency light flickered overhead, casting long, uneven shadows across what looked like a forgotten maintenance tunnel beneath Fort Armitage. For a moment, she didn't know how she got here. Then memory crashed back in. The beam. The blast. The fall. Her fingers instinctively searched the floor beside her, found nothing but shattered concrete and the echo of her own heartbeat. The Crimson Hawk was gone. Her chest constricted, a panic deeper than fear. That rifle wasn't just a weapon. It was Ethan's lifeline. It carried the last part of him that the world hadn't buried. She forced a breath. Then another. 1, 2, 3, 4, reset. The tremor in her hand steadied into that familiar metronome, her survival rhythm. She pushed herself up, body screaming in bruises. Her left shoulder throbbed where she'd landed hard. Something warm trickled down her arm. She wiped blood with the back of her wrist. It smeared, dark and sticky. A voice groaned somewhere in the dark. "Hale," she called out, breath ragged. A strained cough answered. She stumbled toward the sound, boots crunching on broken glass. Hale lay against a support beam, half-crushed equipment pinning his leg. His face was pale in the flicker light. "You okay?" he rasped. She crouched beside him, checking his vitals with practiced hands. "You'll live," she said. He smirked weakly. "Funny, doesn't feel like it." She examined his leg, a jagged shard of steel embedded deep. "We're going to need leverage," she muttered, "and a pain threshold you're probably not ready for." "Great," Hale grinned through clenched teeth. "Motivational speech of the year." Alyssa looked away, toward where the rifle must have fallen. The tunnel stretched forward into pitch-black nothing, the kind of darkness that swallowed everything that dared to hope. "We can't stay here," she said. "They'll sweep the tunnels next." Hale's eyes sharpened. "Your rifle is down here somewhere," she cut in. "And we're not leaving without it." There was more weight in that promise than in any gun. She slid her shoulder under the slab pinning him. "On 3, she warned. 1. She lifted on 1. Hale screamed, sharp, guttural, as he dragged himself free. "You said 3, he groaned. "I lied." He laughed, painful, exhausted, grateful. They limped deeper into the tunnel. Every few steps the lights flickered, like the base itself was trying to decide whether it was alive or dying. "Hear that?" Alyssa whispered. Hale focused past the ringing in his ears. "Boots. Dozens. Methodical. Hunting." He stiffened. "They're already down here." Alyssa nodded. "They'll use thermal scans. This tunnel won't hide us long." "So what do we do?" "We move," she said, "fast." But she didn't move. She froze, eyes catching something on the ground ahead. A trail of scrape marks in the dust, the width of a rifle stock. The Crimson Hawk. She followed the markings with her gaze, disappearing into a branch tunnel off to the left. A darker path, less lighting, more risk. She almost smiled. Of course it wouldn't choose the safe way. She stepped toward the darkness. "Alyssa," Hale called quietly, "wait." She turned. His face wasn't questioning her judgment. It was questioning her aloneness. "So this Crimson Hawk," he said, "what is it really?" Her throat tightened. She could lie. She could evade. But she had already lived 8 years trapped inside silence. "It was designed by my brother," she said, "to give soldiers choices command couldn't override." Hale frowned. "Explain." She stepped closer so her voice wouldn't carry. "It can refuse a kill order," she whispered. "It recognizes civilians, hostages, biosignatures with fear responses. If a shot causes unjustifiable loss, it locks. The rifle literally won't fire." Hale stared like he'd just learned what a miracle weighed. "That's incredible," he breathed. Why hide a weapon that could save lives? Because it could also stop the wrong people from taking them, she said. The Pentagon wanted a trigger, she continued, bitterness breaking through. Ethan created a conscience. And they killed him for it. Hale's expression shifted, respect forged into loyalty. They fear that weapon, he said. No, Alyssa corrected. They fear what it represents. She started down the dark tunnel, shadows swallowing her boots. Hale limped after her. If it's that smart, will it know you're coming? She didn't answer with words. Her hand drifted to her chest, where Ethan's dog tags rested under her shirt. Her thumb brushed the cold metal. He always protected me. Now I protect what's left of him. A voice echoed from far ahead, metallic and amplified. SBECTRE Survivor LOCATED. Secure the asset. Alyssa's pulse surged. They weren't calling the rifle the asset. They were calling her the asset. The weight of betrayal slammed into her ribs, the memory too sharp to resist anymore. Hellman 8 years earlier. Rain cold, mud thick as swallowed fear. Alyssa crouched behind a burning armored vehicle. Ethan beside her, breath fogging, eyes focused on an unseen threat. We're compromised, he whispered. Someone fed them our route. She shook her head, not wanting to believe. No, we filed the plan 30 minutes ago. Only command saw. He looked at her, and she saw it in his eyes. He already knew. We finish what we came to do, Ethan said. Then we hold long enough for exfil. Bullets screamed overhead. Alyssa fired, preciser than fear should allow, but there were more enemy shapes than she could count. Ethan pressed the drive into her vest. Run! She refused, grabbed his arm. I'm not leaving you. You don't have to leave me, he said softly. You just have to survive me. Then he pushed her hard and turned his weapon toward the incoming soldiers. She screamed his name as they dragged her onto the evac chopper, every bullet fire lighting the truth she'd been denying. This wasn't an ambush. It was a cleanup. The last she saw of her brother, he was standing alone, rifle burning red in the rain, making sure she lived long enough to tell the world what he built. But she hadn't told the world. She ran. The tunnel snapped back into focus, boots pounding closer. Alyssa wiped the sting from her eyes, anger calcifying into purpose. We're not repeating Hellman, she growled. Hale straightened despite the pain, agreed. Their shadows stretched ahead of them like warnings. The scrape marks led to a collapsed maintenance room. Metal beams twisted like broken bones. Electrical panels had exploded against the walls, smoke still curling upward in thin gray ribbons. They're half buried under debris, the faint glow of crimson steel. Alyssa's heart kicked. She rushed forward, digging through rubble with bare hands until her fingers wrapped around the rifle stock. The moment she touched it, a pulse traveled up her arm. Recognition. Welcome back. She exhaled, a sound too heavy to be relief. Her brother's conscience was in her hands again. We move, she said. Hale nodded. They turned and found Mercer blocking the tunnel behind them. Her pistol aimed directly at Alyssa. Her eyes haunted with guilt and fear. You can't take that weapon out of here, Mercer whispered. Alyssa lifted the Crimson Hawk, not aimed, just present. Shoot me, Alyssa said, and the truth dies again. Mercer's voice cracked. You don't understand. No, Alyssa cut in. You don't understand. I didn't survive Spectre so I could watch you finish what they started. Bootsteps thundered behind Mercer, strike team operatives moving in fast. Mercer hesitated, gun lowering slightly. I never wanted this, she said. I wasn't given a choice. Alyssa stepped closer, eyes burning with the weight of everyone who died without one. You always had a choice, she whispered. You just made the wrong one. Hale grabbed Mercer's arm and yanked her behind cover as gunfire erupted down the tunnel. Alyssa took point, breathing in fours, the tremor in her hand syncing perfectly with the timing of attack. Her internal countdown began. 4 seconds in. Hold. Exhale. Reset. Each tremor became a warning. Each warning became a kill. Contractors dropped, visors cracked, armor split. The tunnel filled with smoke and static. Alyssa stood at the front, crimson glow, lighting her silhouette like a vengeful memory carved into the earth. The last attacker fell, body hitting concrete with a dull echo of finality. Silence. Mercer stared at Alyssa, horror and awe tangled in her expression. You can't beat them, Mercer whispered. They own the truth, they own the story. Alyssa wiped sweat from her brow, eyes smoldering with fire that no weapon could extinguish. Then I'll take the story back, she said, word by word. The Crimson Hawk hummed in agreement. The war wasn't over. It was finally beginning. How do you escape a maze built to keep you buried? The emergency lights flickered once more and then surrendered to darkness entirely. For a breath, nothing existed except the echo of Alyssa's pulse inside her skull, steady, rhythmic, unafraid. Hale grunted as he shifted weight off his injured leg. Mercer stayed close behind them, her pistol trembling in her grip like fear had finally made a home in her bones. Alyssa pressed her palm against the wall, feeling vibrations traveling through metal frames. They're sealing off sectors, she whispered, cutting the tunnels into kill boxes. So we're trapped, Mercer muttered. Alyssa turned her head just enough to look Mercer in the eyes, cold, razor clarity. No, they are. Boots pounded distantly, dozens organized, closing in. Alyssa lifted the Crimson Hawk, its crimson glow dim but alive, and led them deeper into the tunnel network. The air thickened with dust and tension. Pipes creaked overhead. Hale limped faster than his body wanted to. Mercer followed awkwardly, like someone unused to being saved. A junction appeared, 2 branching tunnels. Left a sign read, Fuel and Power. Right, Research, ARCHIVES. Hale exhaled, which way? Alyssa didn't hesitate, Archives. Why not power? Mercer asked. Alyssa's voice sharpened, because they expect me to choose power. Someone behind them shouted. Contact. Laser sights painted the far end of the tunnel in red. Alyssa shoved Hale and Mercer forward. Go. She fired twice, precision shots that made the tunnel roar. The first operative dropped instantly. The second stumbled, visor cracked, scrambling backward like fear finally returned to him. Alyssa ducked into the right passage. Mercer slammed a panel button. The blast door groaned and then sealed behind them with a thunderous clang. For now, they had air to breathe. But the air smelled like old secrets. Dust danced through faint beams of light cutting from cracks in the walls. Rows of metal cabinets lined the cramped corridor, each stamped with labels long classified out of living memory. Hale's flashlight beam shined across a cabinet tag. Project Spectre. Authorized access only. Alyssa's chest tightened, her fingers brushing along the cold steel. Everything they stole from us, she whispered. Mercer swallowed. Those files were supposed to have been destroyed. They destroyed the people, Alyssa said, not the proof. Mercer tried to steady herself. If those strike teams get their hands on this. They'll erase it, Alyssa interrupted. Erase Spectre, erase Ethan, erase me. Her hand brushed over another drawer, stamped with rusted letters. Crimson Program Design Lead, E. Monroe. Alyssa's breath caught. Hale watched her eyes softening. You don't have to look, he said. She traced the drawer handle anyway, fingertips trembling. I already see it every night, she breathed. Looking won't make it worse. She pulled the drawer open. Papers, schematics, photos. Her brother smiling beside a prototype rifle, the Crimson Hawk before trauma painted it red. Her thumb brushed Ethan's face. The tunnel suddenly felt too small to hold her grief. Mercer broke the silence, voice low, ashamed. I told them Spectre was unstable. I said you were dangerous. I thought, if you survived, you'd destroy everything we built. Alyssa didn't look at her. You thought wrong, she said. I destroy what destroys others. Mercer's voice cracked, not from fear. From regret she never wanted to confess. I'm sorry, she whispered. Alyssa slid the photo into her vest pocket. Be sorry later, she replied. Right now you help us survive. A sharp buzz echoed overhead, followed by a calm, chilling voice over hidden tunnel speakers. SPECTRE survivor, you have 6 minutes. Hale stared upward, bewildered. They're giving a countdown. It's not mercy, Alyssa answered. It's theater. They want command to think this was a coordinated terrorist attack, so they can wipe the base clean to contain me. Mercer's eyes widened. They'll level the entire facility. Alyssa nodded grimly. Everything above us becomes a grave. Hale turned toward Alyssa, urgency rising. What's the exit plan? There's a rail line, she said. Abandoned supply track for munitions, if it's still intact. The tunnel roof exploded. Concrete spat downward. Sparks rained from severed wiring. An operative smashed through the breach, heavy armor, visor glowing with menace. He lunged for Alyssa. She fired, the blast so fierce it threw him backward into the ceiling. 3 more dropped behind him. Hale dragged Mercer into cover as Alyssa repositioned. She counted, her breathing the metronome of violence. 1, 2, 3, 4, reset. She fired, recoil cracking dust from the walls. 1 operative fell silent. Another staggered, injured but advancing. The 3rd opened fire, bullets ripping heat through the air inches from Alyssa's face. Alyssa slipped into a dead angle, one they didn't expect, moving like someone who'd spent a lifetime fighting from impossible positions. Her elbow cracked into the 3rd operative's visor, gunshot echoing immediately after, helmet shattering like a lie exposed. Silence rushed in again, brief and trembling. Alyssa scanned for movement. None. We need that rail line, she said. That's deeper underground, Mercer warned, near the quarantined vaults. Alyssa replied without fear. I've lived in quarantine for 8 years. They pushed forward, moving fast now, metal cabinets thinning as a wider tunnel took shape. Tracks, broken in places, traced into darkness. A rusted maintenance tram sat abandoned on the rails. Hale climbed in, wincing. Mercer followed. Alyssa checked the power panel, dead. She popped the casing and twisted 2 ignition wires together with her teeth gritted. The tram's core hummed to life, old but willing. Hale raised his weapon toward the tunnel entrance. Do we even know where this leads? Alyssa slid into the driver's seat. Anywhere but here. She jammed the throttle. The cart lurched forward, wheels screeching against rust and history. The tunnel swallowed them. Behind them, strike team boots thundered into the dark. The tram picked up speed, faster, faster still, flickering lights strobing the world into glimpses of terror and hope. Mercer stared ahead, voice barely above a breath. What if the rail ends suddenly? Alyssa gripped the controls tighter. Then we fly. Hale smirked. You're insane. Alyssa's eyes never left the track. I learned from the best. Miles above them, in a command center undisclosed to any soldier, a man watched a live thermal feed of the rail tunnel. A scar crossed his jaw, rosary dog tags wrapped around his wrist. General Carson. Alive. Breathing. Very, very real. She's improvising, he said calmly. A tactical officer stood nervously beside him. "Sir, should we send Alpha Squad to cut off the rail exit?" Carson smirked without humor. "No, let her run," he murmured. "She's going somewhere." He turned the dog tags over in his hand, metal glinting under cold lights. One name scratched away. The other preserved. Etienne Monroe. Carson's voice darkened. "Bring her to Damascus alive. We need the signature key." The officer nodded, trembling. Carson stepped closer to the screen, Alyssa's thermal figure blazing like a burning truth. "You always were exceptional, Monroe," he whispered. "But so was your brother." He tapped the glass, where Alyssa's silhouette fled deeper underground. "And now I get to finish what I started." The tram dove into a wider cavern, rails splitting left and right. Alyssa braked hard, sparks spitting. The left tunnel collapsed. Right tunnel intact. "Right it is," she breathed. Hale checked behind, no pursuers yet. Mercer whispered shakily, "You're fighting a war you can't win." Alyssa glanced at her, fury and conviction carved into her features. "I'm not fighting a war," she said. "I'm ending one." Her hand rested atop the Crimson Hawk. The tremor in her wrist stilled. For the first time all day. There was no countdown. Only purpose. And forward motion. Wherever this tunnel led. They were going together. Why does every escape reveal a deeper trap? The tram rattled faster, metal wheels screaming like they were trying to warn them of something ahead. Alyssa leaned forward, eyes narrowing into the dark, waiting for the moment the world tried to kill them again. It didn't take long. The rails curved sharply, leading toward a sealed blast door blocking the entire tunnel. A red indicator pulsed above it, offline, locked, immovable. Mercer gasped, "We're done." Alyssa slammed the brakes. The tram skidded sideways, sparks carving lightning into the dark. Hale gripped the railing until his knuckles went bone white. The tram stopped a mere meter from the steel gate. Hale breathed out a shaking exhale. That was close. Alyssa didn't celebrate. She was already off the vehicle, flashlight beam cutting through dust. "There should be a manual override," she muttered, scanning the corner of the wall. Mercer limped beside her, pistol drawn. "If this isn't powered, we're trapped under half a mile of concrete." Hale dragged himself off the tram, leaning heavy on his rifle. Alyssa found an old panel, its metal rusted, keypad dead. She ripped the casing off, exposing a mess of wires. "Can you get it open?" Hale asked. "It's not about opening," Alyssa replied, eyes narrowing. "It's about convincing it we were never here." She twisted wires with quick, confident hands, years of Spectre training transforming muscle memory into instinct. A spark snapped. The lights flickered. An automated voice crackled through hidden speakers. "Identity required, present authorization." Mercer froze. "My clearance won't work. This system predates my posting." Alyssa stepped forward. "No, it belongs to Spectre." She reached for her brother's dog tags. Two pieces of metal, one name erased, one name holding every reason she was still breathing. She tapped the engraved tag against the scanner. A sharp beep. The lights flared. The door groaned like a creature waking from death, and then slowly, painfully, started to rise. Cold, sterile air flooded the tunnel. Hale stared ahead. "Where the hell are we?" Alyssa lifted her flashlight. The beam stretched into a vast chamber, walls lined with glass panels, computer banks asleep in decades of darkness. Strips of maintenance LEDs flickered overhead, turning on section by section like an awakening beast. A symbol glowed faintly on the wall. SBCTRE, Research/Bunker Sigma 13. Mercer swallowed hard. This place wasn't supposed to exist. Alyssa slipped inside, voice razor steady. Everything about Spectre wasn't supposed to exist. The bunker stretched far into the unlit dark, a forgotten archive of everything that once made Spectre 9 a threat. Hale's beam caught on something near the center. 3 experimental pods. 2 shattered. 1 still sealed. Red frost clung to its viewport. Ethan's lab, Alyssa whispered, almost a prayer. Dust swirled beneath their boots as they moved deeper. Transparent boards filled with schematics stood untouched, scribbled equations, ballistic trajectories, neural lock signatures. Hale read one line aloud. Autonomous conscience cannot be centralized, must bond to human empathy. He looked at Alyssa. He built that into you. Alyssa didn't reply, but her silence answered more honestly than words. A sudden crackle of static hissed from an old speaker mounted on the far wall. Then a voice, distorted and calm, filled the bunker. "Alyssa, you found your way home." Hale whipped around, rifle raised. Alyssa's breath stopped. She recognized that voice. "Carson," she said, teeth grinding. Mercer flinched, fear replacing every lie she lived behind. The speaker buzzed again as Carson's voice turned softer, almost proud. "You always were the one they couldn't tame. That's why Ethan loved you more than the project." Alyssa's blood turned to knives. "You murdered him," she spat. Carson chuckled, a cold, empty sound. "He chose death when he chose you." The Crimson Hawk hummed in her grip, reacting to her rising pulse, sinking with the fury climbing her spine. Carson continued. "You can't run, Alyssa. This bunker is a dead end. No exits except the one we're sealing behind you." A rumbling thud echoed through the corridor, the blast door slamming shut again, locking them in. Hale cursed under his breath. "We just walked into a coffin." Alyssa didn't panic. She set panic on fire. "We don't need exits," she said. "We make one." Mercer's voice trembled. "That's reinforced metasteel we'd need." Alyssa cut her off. "Power." She sprinted toward the central workstation, a dusty control console. She slammed a switch upward. Nothing. She kicked the panel open, sparks biting her boot. "Help me reroute the emergency capacitor," she ordered. Mercer blinked. "I don't know this system." "You know enough," Alyssa growled. "Move." They worked together, wires twisting, circuits reconnecting, power struggling to breathe again. Lights surged, the bunker humming to life, with a rising mechanical growl. A containment chamber whirred open in the distance, and a small sphere rolled free, glowing, pulsing silver blue. Hale stepped back wide-eyed. Is that supposed to happen?" Alyssa's eyes widened. She recognized the device instantly. "It's a stability core," she breathed, "designed to amplify the rifle's output." Mercer stared. "You mean?" Alyssa grabbed the core, its energy vibrating in her palm. "I mean I finally have the firepower to crack this tomb." Carson's voice sharpened, the first sign of his confidence cracking. "Alyssa, stop now." She smiled, a dangerous, quiet smile. "No." She clicked the core into the Crimson Hawk. The rifle's glow intensified, crimson turning molten, humming like righteous anger. She aimed at the blast door. Hale covered his ears. Mercer shielded her face. Alyssa whispered to the weapon like it could hear. "For him." She fired. The bunker exploded with light and sound, a shockwave ripping the reinforced door off its rails. Metal screamed, walls shuddered, alarms wailed. Smoke filled the air. Alyssa stepped forward through it, silhouette glowing in red firelight. Carson's voice returned, strained now furious. "You think this ends here? You have no idea what we've built." Alyssa lifted the rifle over her shoulder. "I don't need to know what you built," she said. "I'll burn it anyway." Hale limped up beside her. "Then what now?" Alyssa stared into the smoke, through the ruined blast door. Above ground, the enemy waited. Beyond them, the truth. Now, she whispered, we take the fight to them. She turned to Mercer. You're coming with us. Mercer swallowed, then nodded once. Not because she was ordered, because she finally chose a side. Alyssa headed toward the stairwell leading upward, back into a war that refused to kill her quietly. The rifle pulsed with fire. Her pulse answered. For the first time since Ethan died, Alyssa wasn't running. She was hunting. Why does daylight always reveal who the real monsters are? Alyssa ascended the narrow steel staircase first, Crimson Hawk slung tight, the new core pulsing heat against her spine. Hale followed, fighting through pain with every step. Mercer brought up the rear, pistol shaking but resolve tightening. The air grew warmer as they climbed, dust filtering down from above. The ground trembled faintly, rotors beating the wind somewhere outside. They're repositioning for another strike, Alyssa murmured. Hale winced. After what you did to the first one, they're insane. No, she corrected, they're desperate. The stairwell ended at a rusted hatch. Alyssa pushed, and sunlight burst through like a punch. They emerged into chaos. Fort Armitage was no longer a training base. It was a battlefield. Smoke spooled upward from burning buildings. Barracks lay in chunks, Humvees overturned and riddled with holes. Black-clad contractors swept systematically through the facility, eliminating survivors, collecting bodies. A cleansing. A cover-up. A massacre designed to be blamed on her. Alyssa crouched low behind a collapsed tower wall. Her heart clenched at the sight of Marines, young, terrified, trying to hold the line with no idea what they were fighting. Those are our people, Hale growled, grip tightening on his rifle. Mercer's voice dropped, barely a whisper. This is on me. Alyssa didn't let her finish. You can suffer later, she said. Right now, you get to choose who you save. Mercer met her gaze, something haunted shifting into something human. Alyssa scanned the sky. 2 remaining strike helicopters hovered high, guns angled downward like executioners deciding who dies first. On the ground, a group of Marines was pinned near the motor pool, crates shielding them from relentless fire. A medic screamed for help. Hale pushed up to one knee. We have to get them out. Alyssa steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. We will, she said, but we do it smart. She pointed to the burned communications tower. Blind them first. If those choppers can't see, their soldiers can't move. And how exactly? Mercer began. Alyssa lifted the Crimson Hawk. The rifle glowed brighter, humming with lethal promise. Mercer shut her mouth. Alyssa exhaled 4 seconds in. Hold. 4 seconds out. Reset. She fired. The shot tore the air apart, a streak of molten red arcing upward like a wrathful comet. It smashed into the side of the nearest helicopter, an EMP shockwave detonating through its chassis. Panels flew off like shrapnel from a dying star. The aircraft spiraled violently, clipping its partner before plunging into the runway in a fireball. The second chopper swerved, pilot fighting controls. Alyssa fired again, this time, a pulse that ripped through its underside. Sparks fountained from the rotor. The aircraft dipped but didn't fall. Not yet. Instead, it unleashed a barrage, railgun fire, carving the earth around them into molten glass. Move, Alyssa shoved Hale and Mercer behind a wrecked APC. The ground shook as rounds hammered the vehicle. Hale yelled over the blasts, we're going to die here. Alyssa peered around the tire, eyes calculating, heartbeat calm. No, she said, not today. Her voice wasn't hope. It was certainty. She angled the rifle upward again, but before she fired, a bullet whistled past her cheek. A sniper. A good one. She dragged Hale lower, eyes scanning windows, rooftops, shadows. There, third floor of the admin building. She saw only a glint, but that was enough. Alyssa braced the rifle, slow breath, micro-correction, execute. The Crimson Hawk bucked silently, just a flash of red. The sniper's visor splintered, and the body slumped backward. Hale stared at her like she was bending physics into guilt. "How are you this?" Alyssa didn't answer. Because everything she was now, she never wanted to be. Contractors spotted their position, boots pounding against concrete as a squad advanced. "Coming from the left flank," Mercer shouted. Alyssa nodded, flipping a switch on the rifle's housing. The core glowed brighter. The hum turned into a growl. This shot wouldn't just strike. It would shake. She aimed at the ground in front of the advancing squad. Fired. The explosion didn't rise upward, it rippled outward. The earth convulsed beneath the attackers, throwing them like dolls into the air. Gear shattered. Armor broke. The strike team lay motionless, some alive, none standing. Hale whistled under his breath. Holy. Alyssa was already moving. She sprinted toward the pinned Marines, bullets tearing the air around her. One grazed her shoulder. She winced but kept running. When she reached the barricade, young Marines stared at her as if a ghost had stepped out of a legend. That crimson rifle. That calm breathing. That refusal to die. "You're," one Marine stammered, eyes wide. "You're her." Alyssa slammed a fresh charge into the rifle's core. "Not today," she replied. "I'm yours." Hope, sharp and wild, ignited in their eyes. She pointed to the fuel depot ruins. "We move on my command. Keep low and follow the fire." "The fire," the medic repeated, confused. Alyssa fired into the ground again, this time in a sweeping line. The shot split into a wall of red plasma, curving like a protective serpent, blocking the contractor's sight line. "Now," she yelled. The Marines scrambled behind her, shielded by a living barrier of crackling heat and light. Alyssa guided them toward Hale and Mercer's position. Hale grinned at the sight. "Remind me to never make you angry." "You already have," she said as they passed. Gunfire rose again, louder than before. The remaining helicopter unleashed a missile, streaking toward their path like a guided accusation. Alyssa halted, turning fully toward the incoming death. She exhaled. 4 seconds. Her hands steadied. 2. She aimed slightly above the missile. 1. Fired. The rifle's blast hit the projectile midair, detonating it prematurely. The explosion bloomed overhead, raining harmless fire. Hale stared at the aftermath. Mercer whispered, stunned. "That shouldn't be possible." Alyssa lowered the rifle, chest heaving. "That's what they said about all of us." The ground thundered again, but not from gunfire this time. A convoy burst through the gate, military Humvees, command trucks, and tactical units marked with U.S. insignia. Not private. Not covert. Reinforcements. Real Marines. General Olivia Grant stepped out, boots sinking into the destruction. She took in the bodies, the fires, the blood. And then she saw Alyssa. Her eyes widened, awe and apology and fear all wrestling inside her expression. "Alyssa Monroe," Grant breathed, "you're alive." Alyssa nodded once, too tired, too angry to offer ceremony. Grant looked up at the damaged helicopter still hovering, then pointed. "Target that aircraft," she ordered. But the Crimson Hawk was faster. Alyssa fired one last shot, clean and merciful. The helicopter engine seized, and the craft drifted downward, pilot ejecting too late. The machine tumbled into the far dunes and disappeared in smoke. Silence finally took back the base. Alyssa sagged onto one knee, exhaustion ripping through discipline. Hale rushed to her side, catching her before she collapsed fully. "You did it," he whispered. Alyssa stared across the ruined base, her voice heavier than victory. No, I just killed the silence. Mercer lowered her pistol, knees trembling. Gran approached cautiously. This isn't over, she said softly. Alyssa nodded, eyes distant, haunted. Carson's alive, she whispered. Grant's jaw tightened, color draining from her face. Alyssa looked up, tears caught in fury. He's heading to Damascus. Hale sucked in a breath. Why there? Alyssa tilted her head toward the Crimson Hawk, its glow fading again into a deep, ominous red. Because the next version of this weapon won't have a conscience. A quiet beat. Grant stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're not alone anymore. Let us help. Alyssa stared at the sky, clouds drifting peacefully as though they didn't know war. You can help, she said. Her voice sharpened, sure and final. Send everything you have, the biggest plane, the loudest message. Hale tied a field bandage around her shoulder. Where will you be? Alyssa met his eyes, fierce, unbroken. I'm going to take my brother's fight back to the place they stole it from. The wind cut across the ruins, carrying the smell of fire and truth. Alyssa lifted the Crimson Hawk, bruised but determined. Damascus, she whispered. No more ghosts. Only vengeance dressed as justice. She started walking, each step a promise. No one dared stop her. Because some wars don't ask for permission. How do you confront a man who thinks he owns your fate? Alyssa stood at the open ramp of the C-17, wind whipping through her hair as the desert night stretched endlessly below. City lights glittered in the distance, Damascus, ancient and unready for the storm coming. She checked her rifle, the Crimson Hawk, still warm from saving lives, still glowing faintly with the fire of everything she had lost. Hale stepped up beside her, crutch set aside, determined to stand. Mercer stood on Alyssa's other flank, her expression no longer the frightened mask of a pawn, but the hardened resolve of someone choosing the right enemy at last. You don't have to do this alone, Hale said, voice taut with concern. Alyssa didn't take her eyes off the horizon. I never wanted any of this, she replied, but I'm the only one who can finish it. Mercer swallowed, guilt bleeding through her voice. You're not a weapon, Alyssa. Alyssa's jaw tightened. No, I'm the conscience they tried to kill. The ramp operator signaled 2 minutes to drop. Grant's voice echoed through their comms. Objective is the research compound beneath the former embassy. Carson has initiated Project Requiem, global deployment clock unknown. Hale cursed softly. He's going to unleash an army. Alyssa finally faced them, eyes burning. No, he's going to unleash a world without empathy. Wind tore her breath away as she stepped onto the ramp edge. Hale reached out. Hey, if you don't make it. She gripped his hand once, a brief, powerful anchor. I will. And she jumped. The world swallowed her whole, wind blasting against her goggles as she plummeted through stars. She kept her body tight, steady, focused. Gravity's roar sounded like applause from ghosts who once believed in her. Below the dark compound. A rooftop. A single skylight. Target acquired. She pulled her chute at the last possible heartbeat, landing silently in a crouch. The chute dissolved into camouflage netting behind her. Hale and Mercer landed moments later, less graceful, but alive. Alyssa scanned the rooftop. Guards patrolled, 2 on rotation. Silent takedowns, quick, clean. Alyssa signaled, 3 fingers. Hale nodded, moving left, Mercer right, Alyssa forward. 3 breaths later, 3 bodies down. No alarms. They slipped inside through the skylight, landing above an observation deck overlooking a colossal lab. Rows of containment pods glowed with blue light, each holding a weaponized mimic of the Crimson Hawk, ready for distribution. Alyssa's chest tightened, fury blooming into dread. Carson stood on a platform, hands clasped behind his back, smile carved in shadow. Command screens lit his face with cold triumph. "My finest survivor arrives," he called out, voice echoing, "right on time." Alyssa raised her rifle, but didn't fire. "Not yet." Carson approached on metal steps, perfectly calm. "You helped perfect the system," he told her. "Ethan provided the science, you provided the soul." Hale's voice cracked behind her. "He's twisted." Carson ignored him, eyes only on Alyssa. "You could have been the future, but you chose sentiment over duty." Alyssa smiled, bitter, proud. "And you chose murder over mercy." Carson's jaw tightened. "Sympathy is a flaw." Alyssa stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "No," she whispered. "Sympathy is what separates us from the monsters." Carson lifted a remote, thumb resting over a red trigger. "You shoot me, Requiem deploys. 1,000 weapons unleashed. Millions die. Heroes become terrorists." He leaned close, breath freezing her skin. "You can't win." Alyssa didn't flinch. "I already have." Because the remote wasn't the only way to trigger the system. Hale and Mercer slipped toward the main console, quietly severing the uplink. Code scrambled, wires ripped free. Carson lifted the remote higher, but the system beeped with a locked-out warning. He spun, furious. "What have you done?" Alyssa stepped into his rage. "Made you human again." Carson drew a pistol, firing wildly. Alyssa dove, Mercer dragged Hale down as bullets shattered glass and ricocheted off metal beams. Alyssa rolled into cover, heart hammering. She peeked around the pillar. Carson was moving toward the console. Hale grunted, leg bleeding from torn stitches. "He's trying to reboot manually." Alyssa moved, fast, low, lethal. She closed distance with the quiet rage of someone who has buried too many promises. She kicked the gun from Carson's hand. It clattered across the floor. He struck her hard, a blow fueled by pride and panic. She stumbled but didn't fall. Carson lunged again, but she was faster. She elbowed him across the jaw, teeth cracking. He reeled, blinking blood. "It should have been you," he spat, "in that grave with Ethan." Alyssa froze, breath collapsing inward. Time slowed. The lab dissolved into memory. Ethan's smile. Ethan's sacrifice. Ethan's last breath in her trembling arms. Tears hit the steel grate beneath her feet. Carson thought he'd struck her weakness. But he struck her strength. Alyssa lifted the Crimson Hawk, pressing the barrel to Carson's chest. "This was my brother's greatest creation," she whispered, "but you forgot the rule he built into every fiber." Carson sneered, unafraid. "What rule?" Alyssa's voice bowed the room. "Only protect the worthy." She fired. Not a kill shot. A forced shockwave launching Carson backward into a containment pod. The energy locked him inside, glass ceiling, metal clamps engaging. He slammed his fists against the barrier, screaming. "You can't bury the future." Alyssa watched him with a quiet ache. "No," she said softly, "but I can choose one worth living." She stepped back as the containment system hissed, scanning Carson with red lasers. The pod filled with cryomist, freezing his screams into silence. Alyssa turned, shoulders shaking, the war exiting her body through trembling breaths. Requiem was dead. Her conscience was. A slow alarm whooped in the distance, the entire compound preparing for detonation. Self-destruct protocols triggered by the collapse of command. Mercer cursed, "We need to go." Hale slung his rifle over his shoulder. "Now, Monroe." Alyssa nodded, wiping tears with the back of her glove. They sprinted upward, through shattered halls and emergency strobes, up staircases that shook under their boots. Explosions chased every heartbeat. They reached the roof, wind roaring, smoke rising from vents. A black helicopter swooped in Grant's voice, crackling through the radio. "Jump, Alyssa." But Alyssa hesitated, turning back toward the flames, where her brother's ghost might still linger. Hale grabbed her arm, voice raw. "He's gone." A tear dropped, disappearing into the wind. She whispered to the fire below. "Thank you for making me feel." Hale squeezed her hand tighter. "We need you, Alyssa, all of us." Mercer stepped closer, eyes reflecting both guilt and gratitude. "You taught me what duty really means." Alyssa closed her eyes. Not to hide tears, but to release them. She stepped into the chopper, Hale and Mercer following. As they ascended, the compound below erupted, a pillar of fire lighting Damascus like a fallen star. Alyssa stared out the open door, wind tangling in her hair, horizon wide and waiting. Grant's voice called, "What now, Marine?" Alyssa looked at the Crimson Hawk, no longer a curse but a promise. Her voice cracked, soft but unbreakable. "Now I live." The helicopter turned west, chasing the first light of dawn. Alyssa let the sun kiss her scars. She breathed for the first time without guilt. Sometimes the loudest justice is a quiet survival. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.